Now let's take a look at the deformation subpalette. So this is going to give us the ability to modify and deform the different parts of our model. So if we open up deformation, this is in the tool palette. You can see we have all these sliders. So let's focus here from offset down. So we've got offset, which is basically move, rotate, and size, which is basically scale. We have bend, smooth bend, flatten and skew, twist, squeeze, inflate. I use inflate a lot. And so what these will do is you have positive and negative amounts, and you have the different axes that you can choose based on what you want to do. So let's say that I want to size this up, okay? And I only want to do it in one axis. So I'll turn off every axis. So I'm going to size it up in the y-axis. If I drag the slider, you can see it stretch that geometry out or squish it down. Now, keep in mind, when I let go of this, so let's say I go to 61 or 60-ish, and I let go, that's going to pop back to 0. So it's not going to be something where you have the ability to just quickly change that number where it remembers, oh, I've scaled it up 60. It's not like a transform like that. So it's going to work a little bit differently. I'll just undo that. But you can come in and I can bend it this way, or you can do a smooth bend. And that's in the z-axis, but if I change the axis, we can do that, bend it that way. Or you can have multiple axes, create some really cool effects. We can skew it. Or there's the smooth skew. And again, it's based on the axis that we have selected. We could rotate or, just offset in a particular axis. Here's twist. So we can twist it that way. Let's twist in the Y instead. So we can twist things around like that, which is kind of cool. And that's affecting everything in that subtool. Inflate is really cool because that'll take the polygons and kind of move them out along their own normal. So it has the effect of kind of just pushing things out. So if I inflate everything, you can see it gives me this sort of bubbly sort of shape. Everything's getting swelled up and inflated. Inflate balloon is very similar. Okay, we do spherize. You can see it kind of turns everything into a sphere shape. Okay, so what's cool about these is that you can use masking to define areas that you want to actually use these on. So let's say I want to create some eyebrows. So we'll come in and activate symmetry. I'm just going to use the masking. I'm going to draw out where I want those eyebrows to be. And because it's a mask, we haven't really done anything yet. So I can go back in and say, okay, Control now Alt will allow me to come in and refine that mask so I can really paint in exactly where I want that mask to be. And come in here maybe, and now I've taken away too much, so now it's just Control and I go back in and draw that out. And I really spend some time putting putting that in where I want it. Okay, come in here and use whatever technique that you want to get that mask. Now right now, anything that we do on the deformation subpalette is going to affect everything that's unmasked. So what we want to do is invert the mask. So Control click will invert it. Now, if I just use inflate, you can see I'm pushing those brows out. So it's only affected what wasn't masked. And the great thing is now everything's still masked. So if I wanted to come in here and let me just get like a brown, and I've got Z add selected, I can come in here and begin sort of sculpting. Let's take this intensity down. I could kind of start sculpting here, and it's only going to affect the unmasked areas that we just deformed. So it's good as kind of a combination with other tools. I can come in here and sort of, create little hairs and things, but it's not affecting the other part of the geometry, and it's good for making sure we have a clean definition between the two. Okay, if I unmask everything, you can see that. So it gave me a nice clean line using inflate with masking to start working on those brows. Obviously those need a lot of work, but that's the main idea, is that you can use these deformers basically with masking so that certain areas are deformed and certain other areas aren't. Okay, so keep that in mind. You have the ability to move around your subtools with the deformation subpalette, but you also have the ability to inflate. And this is, I can use this for things like armor plates or anything that you want to be well defined and you want to kind of raise up off of the surface. And you can also use it, you can kind of blend in, you know, one area of your mask maybe is really sharp and then you blend in the other area, and so you create kind of a more of a transitional shape here. So for instance, let me just create a mask kind of right here on the cheek. Okay, and I'll even take this focal shift down a little bit and create kind of a really sharp mask. And then I can come in and let me blur out the mask. So if I just control click on the surface, it'll kind of blur that out. You can see the edges of that blurring. And maybe I want to come back in and sort of sharpen up this side of it. And so you can get a different kind of differences in the hardness of the mask. And then if you do your inflate, oops, let me invert that. Do your inflate, you can see it sort of blends into the surface, so it's a little bit harder up here, and then down here it is a little bit softer. And you can come back in and kind of smooth it out a little bit, but it can kind of blend back into the face. All right, so that's a look at using masks with the deformation subpalette. In the next lesson, let's take a look at working a little bit more with materials and how we can kind of fill our objects and then release the materials from our objects using the Subtool Master. So we'll take a look at that next.